This is Hard Parking, brought to you by Right Honda, Right Toyota. Why am I doing this? This is Hard Parking, brought... This is Hard Parking, brought to you by Right Honda and Right Toyota out of Scottsdale, Arizona. I'm your host, Jhae Pfenning. Coming up on today's show, Aaron Forrester is here in studio. We talk about cars. We talk about coffee. We talk about his TVR and whiskey. But first, someone backed a vehicle into a dealership in California. A lot of people were injured. I keep telling you guys, every time this happens a lot more than you think. I think the number was 25,000 times a year where a vehicle goes into a building, whether intentional or unintentional. Got to keep your head on a swivel, even if you think you're inside. Coming up, Aaron Forrester. All right, before we get to Mr. Aaron Forrester, who is back with us for the third time, at least, maybe the fourth?
Second time.
No, you were on originally. Well, let me get through this read really quick.
Okay.
So this conversation is brought to you by Arcus Foundry, Business Tech Filling Whack. Is your Business Tech Filling Whack, Aaron?
It is a little antiquated, yes.
All right, well, guess what? This may be a solution for you. Too many tools, too much chaos, and not enough time. Arcus Foundry is here to fix that with SparkForge. You get a unified platform that connects everything you need, your social media, your website, phone systems, and more. No need for an expensive IT department or dealing with a bunch of separate systems. You're actually helping me get my whole entire world together here. It's the all-in-one solution that saves you time and helps your business run smoother. Head over to arcusfoundry.com. Use the code HARDPARKED to get your first month free. Upgrade your tech and get back to business.
Yeah, I might actually need that.
I know a guy. He's local too now.
No, that's the thing. It's like when it comes to like that type of tech. I mean, I was just looking at new laptops because when I bought my laptop about 10 years ago, I bought like the highest end I could afford, and it's lasted me all the way up until now. But it's after 10 years, it's starting to show its age. And then,
Absolutely.
And then now everything's in the cloud and integration. And it's just becoming more of a pain in the butt. So actually, it sounds really helpful.
Well, like I said, I know a guy. So yeah, you think this is your second time on the podcast?
Yeah. Well, if you don't,
I count them all.
So okay, I know I dropped by here when we were talking about the Tempe Beach Concourse. That was, I want to say almost about 3 years ago.
About 3 years ago, 2.5, 3 years ago. So was that previewing the first one?
Yeah, I believe so.
So that was 3 years ago.
I thought that was the only one.
22. Okay, so let me remind you the very first time. So this is the second time you've been in studio.
Oh, okay.
But it's not your second time on the podcast.
Okay.
Because the first time when you were introduced, we talked about your RX-7.
Yeah.
You're one of the original members of the Arizona Avengers.
Right.
Maybe the founder. One of the founding parties.
I was a founder, yeah.
There you go. Your cool Iron Man thing you made. And you taught me that it's not necessarily called cosplay. It's called something else. I don't know. What's the other word?
It's pretty much just considered cosplay at this point. Yeah. I mean, there's costuming and then there's cosplay.
And you kind of got famous in that avenue because you did the Rocketeer thing.
Sort of, yeah. I mean, small window. Like, basically, it's a whole thing. Big fish, small pond.
Right.
Like any fandom, whether it be Marvel or Rocketeer in this case, like doing like the buckles, and then a certain Hollywood prop manufacturer. I can't substantiate this in fully without seeing it in person, but effectively stole my my design.
I'm sure that happens a lot, honestly.
Yeah, I actually sent him an email, and he basically said, "Talk to my lawyers." And I'm like, his go-to response was, "Talk to my lawyers."
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait. And he said he found a box full of them. I'm like, no. There's only 3 of these buckles in known existence. And they're very, very well documented. Everyone knows where they are. And magically you throw them in every single one of the films you work in now.
That's slimy, dude.
Yeah. So, and apparently he has a reputation. It was in Stranger Things was where I saw people actually send me like, dude, is this your buckle? I was like, what the?
So I haven't seen Stranger Things, but I know it's got a cult following.
Right. So long story short, I was like, you know what? It's not worth it to me to go after like, because it was on camera for like a whopping 5 seconds, and apparently he throws it into other like kind of sci-fi stuff because it's a really, really neat design. But it's still, I'm like, dude, well, I mean, come on. You bought my design, like, well, it's a 3D printed. You don't sell the 3D files, but you bought the design, and just basically stole it.
That sucks. So what are you drinking on across the desk here?
So, for those watching, I have actually raided Jhae's liquor cabinet and got a nice little dram of a Nika
From the barrel.
From the barrel, thank you. Japanese whiskey. So, and it's just nice and neat. I'm not one of those people who puts a drop of like distilled water or put it on ice. I actually just like a nice, neat pour.
Which the Scotch do, which you'll find out.
Right. Yeah. So
We'll get to that.
I mean, just my whiskeys in general is just kind of funny because I actually didn't start drinking until like my late 20s. Or was it early 30s? Either way, a lot later. And when I went straight hard. I mean,
yeah.
And so it's kind of interesting because when it comes to whiskeys, I like single malts, I like Japanese whiskey, who got their education from Ireland and from Scotland and the English as a whole. So that's why a lot of the flavors are there. We're similar, but yeah, this is great. So thank you. I appreciate it. And one of these days I'll have to, like I said, I was telling you, like, I have that full cast strength Aberlour, and that thing is just so good. And the crazy,
is it PD at all? Like,
no,
what's their flavor profile?
No, so it's a Speyside. So like Lowlands, single malt, has Asian sherry casks, and so it has like just a nice French oak taste to it. I know there's a lot of ex-bourbon barrels that they'll use for aging it. But no, this is French oak with sherry, and then it's full cast strength. I mean, that's kind of like if I want rocket fuel, I think it's, golly, I want to say it's in the 70% range. It's up there. And whereas this is like in the 50s.
Right.
So for me, I was just like, oh, that's nice.
Yeah. Like, oh, a nice mild thing to sip on. So
right. And then like I'll have like my Aberlour Abinad for those who drink scotch. It's great. They have two. They have a sherry cask, and then they have a bourbon cask. And I tried both of them, and I like the sherry one better.
I think I have. What is it called? Aberlour?
Aberlour Abinad.
Yeah, I had an Aberlour. My wife actually got me one.
Yeah.
It wasn't bad at all. Yeah. It wasn't high octane.
Yeah, these ones are specifically like the really high end ones. But my favorite go-to scotches are Isla's. So I want it to taste peaty, smoky. I want to be licking a campfire. And
you said you do or you don't?
I love it. Yeah. I do.
Like Octomore?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like Compass Box does like Peat Monster.
Mm-hmm.
Some other really good ones. Ardbeg. They're a little bit more iodine-y. It tastes like a Band-Aid. I know that sounds like a horrible description for a lot of people who may be listening and watching.
Maybe it was an Ardbeg. I had one of the A's.
Yeah, because there's
popular A's.
It's a bunch of A's.
Yeah, but it was one of those we've been talking about.
And it's kind of funny. My wife can't stand it, so I'm like,
she'll learn.
It has like the nice inky iodine. He's like, why would you want to taste Band-Aid, or why do you taste like iodine? I'm like, trust me, it's like it's different. But with my Lafroig, I get what's called a quarter cask, which is really neat because first of all, it's really, really great price. So what they did was when they're hauling scotch across the countryside in Scotland, obviously you see the full barrels were just too big for like the donkeys and the small horses. So they would literally make a quarter size barrel.
That's where it came from?
Yeah. So what?
That's funny.
So it was a quarter cask. So it literally a quarter of a barrel full of the whiskey, but because it was also smaller, it got exposed to more of the oak proportionately. So it's really, really potent on like the barrel, and also because of where Islay is in relation to Scotland, you get all the salty air. Mm-hmm. So not only is the peat different, the dead things are different in the peat bogs, and then as you have all the influence of this salty air creeping in through the oak, which is really, really nice. And
this is the non-automotive automotive podcast. No, that was good. And I'm drinking the Nick Offerman Lagavulin, which just seem to come out with a new one every year. If you finish that before we're done, I can go into the closet there and crack out the Shabui. Nothing's sacred,
Well, see, that's good.
Yeah, nothing's sacred.
Like I see these bottles for like $2,000 like in the store, and I'm like, people just buy and sit on it. It's almost like driving. Once again, kind of connected to cars. People who buy these beautiful cars and then they never drive them. It just sits like a museum piece. Yeah. I'm like, specifically like whiskeys. It's food. Who was it? Like Benjamin Franklin or somebody? One of our founding fathers is like, was it beer is God's proof that He loves men or something like that? But also like how like we, a society and culture, it's that's how we communicate, like pubs and drinking and food. Like, so if you're buying something just to sit on it outside of a special occasion, like it's just a waste.
Yeah, I think it's the collectible. Like as guys, I think more so than females, we like to just hoard shit and collect stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and if the more money we have, the more shit we have. But not everybody, of course.
Yeah.
But it's. I have some stuff in the closet that I haven't opened, but there's an entire like secondhand trade, and you can't legally do it, but I've got friends. If I really want something, I call my buddy up and say, "Hey, can you get me this?" He goes, "Yeah, I got 10 of them. How many do you want?"
Right. I mean, and so like we were mentioning off camera, just for how when Mazda, so when they were launching the FDRX7, they actually commissioned to have whiskey made. It was a Super Nikkei whiskey, and it was like this kind of like almost teardrop looking bottle, but it was flat faced, and they had a sticker of it. It said a Pfenning on it, and it was actually exclusively for Mazda, and it was like it had the red FD, and those go for big bucks now. And it's kind of, and the only way you can find them, every once in a blue moon, you'll go on to like the BuzzBid or like basically the YouTube, or not YouTube, but Yahoo auctions
for liquor.
No, in Japan.
Oh, okay.
They sell it just on their equivalent of eBay. It's a
Bai.
Yes, Bai. Well, you have to go through Bai because you're like an American for dollars, but you can just, it's literally buying it like on their eBay. And so I'll pop on there every now and again looking for very like specific like Mazda speed stuff, and also like the Japanese whiskey or even an empty bottle, because it's really neat and it's collectible. But at the same time, if I were to get it, I'm like, okay, I'm cracking this open, and with me and my other RX-7 buddies here.
That'd be cool.
And it's probably like one of those things where like it's probably sat too long, or it's been in the sun and it oxidized. It's kind of like drinking like a Corona that's been sitting out in the sun too long. I don't know. So it's really, really bad because it's a clear bottle. It's not in the dark.
Right. So the Kingsman.
For bourbon.
Yeah. Well, they have the Statesman bourbon,
yeah,
which actually isn't bad. But they have a Kingsman Scotch, and that was from the first movie, and then the Statesman was from the second movie, and you can get it, the Statesman stuff, and it's not bad. It's like I think $70. In fact, I actually have one of their bourbons in the closet. It's a King Ranch edition, which is only available in Texas.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah,
is that when you did your drive over to the NS
Expo? Yeah, but my buddy grabbed it and saved it for me, the one I was talking about earlier, because he's out there. But I think it's Glendronach. Is that, you know how they have those scotches?
There's a lot of Glen.
There's a lot of Glen, right?
Like
but one of the Glens,
and
no one's
Glenlivet,
It's not Levitt.
like,
I think it's Glendronach maybe, but they had the Kingsman Scotch edition.
It's fun.
I think there was X amount of bottles, and there were 1,200 back when they first popped out, and they were sold out immediately, and that's something I would love to have. So that's like my version of your Mazda bottle, you know what I mean? Like,
would you drink it?
I think so.
Okay.
The bottle would be cool to have, and it's stuff that's made for drinking. But
and I got stuff like I have a bottle I've been sitting on of bourbon barrel aged, an imperial stout that's aged in port wine barrels from the brewery out in California. I've been sitting on that for nearly 10 years, which is you actually can do because it's alcohol content. It's like 21% alcohol in a beer.
Right.
I've always said that's gonna be cracked open for the birth of my first child. So gotta get working on that.
Is it are we in that window yet?
Hopefully soon. Hopefully.
Okay, so it's more than 9 months out at this point. Then is what
we'll
I'm asking. Yeah. So you're on your second TVR.
Yes.
So the last time you were here, we talked about I don't even know. We talked about Tempe Beach Concourse, and I have some questions, kind of where we're at with that.
Sure.
These days. So let's get to the TVR stuff now. You have a new one. You want to tell us what it is in the process, and you also kind of have a TVR business.
Yeah. So,
thank you also, because over the years you kind of reached out to me and asked me for my opinion on things. So that's pretty cool when someone can ask a nutty person like me my opinion on things. Well,
when it comes down to it, I mean, like you talk to a lot of folks who are in different genres, and like anything, like we all find our niche and what we like and what we don't like. So perceptions can be skewed because of that.
Right.
And so for me to say, hey, like, I see it this way. Do you see it this way? Or have you heard? So, but to your point, shortly after I got my Cerberus, so it was the 4.2 liter V8 Cerberus. It was a 97. Sold it to fund my.
So I think you had just got it at the time because this
Right.
was just before you unveiled it.
Yeah, I did my review. So,
Yeah.
I mean, for those who don't know, like actually outside of Jay Leno and Doug DeMuro, I have the highest views of TVR content for an American. I mean, yes, of course, the TVR, like the top tier guys, JM, there's a lot of people in the overseas. But for the United States, I've been kind of dubbed as within our very, 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 very tiny community as like the unofficial spokesperson of TVR.
So I'm sitting in front of a TVR influencer.
In a manner of speaking, yeah. I hate
hate
that,
that
but
word.
at the same time, it's kind of cool because,
Totally.
I've got to meet some amazing people. And I'll show you some of the stories specifically about the Tuscan stuff. So I had my Cerberus, 2+2, V8, had a lot of fun with it, but it was never my go-to. It was like stepping stone into like the TVR world. I wanted something weird, fast, different, lightweight, driver's car. Got what I wanted, sold it on Bring a Trailer, got a good price for it, and started a import business called TVR Imports. And from that point onward, started really, really networking a lot with the folks in the UK. To some degree, parts of like the continent of like Europe too, but mostly UK. I would say about 95% or more of all TVRs are going to be just in like in the UK. Yeah, there's some in Japan, a few other places, but that's about it. So along that process, over the course of like a year or so, building out the website, building out the business, and also I was able to find the actual 1999 TVR Tuscan show car. So this was the actual one. So TVR debuted the Tuscan, which was seen in Swordfish, which was also in Gran Turismo and all these other really, really cool like 1990s. Anybody who from that era, they knew that TVR was like the crazy powerful, and you couldn't really handle it on playing PlayStation. It was like impossible. And the concept debuted in 1998. Totally crazy looking, this kind of peachy, pinky purple transition. Like they were doing like flip paints before really anybody else was doing it big time. Some of the colors that you see now that Lamborghini's popping out or like McLaren's popping out, they were doing 25, 30 years ago.
Right.
And then in 1999, they debuted the show car. And then Richard Hammond, when he was on Men and Motors before he was on Top Gear, reviewed it very, very briefly. It changed hands a few times, and they got a full rebuild, top to bottom, soup to nuts, and the owner was open to selling. The guy had only owned it for a few months. I was like, okay, I have a client who wants to stay anonymous, but he lives in Connecticut, and he wants a flip paint, he wants something really special, and this is the earliest registered production.
What's a
Tuscan.
flip paint? Is that the
Like a chameleon.
name of the? Okay.
Yeah, so it's technically called a reflex charcoal. So depending on the light, it looks like purple or green or charcoal. I mean, touches.
Right.
It's really, really neat.
Yeah.
It really needs light. So my client in Connecticut is like, he say, hey, here's my budget. So I made an offer to act as middleman and as my broker. I said, hey, here's the offer. Done. The guy's like, and he only had it for a few months because he bought it, almost immediately put it into storage because they can't drive in the winter. And so he's like, hey, I've only driven like a few times, but the price he's going to pass up. And then, but I don't feel so bad for him because he actually was very, very happy because he bought an Ultima GTR with it. So basically street legal track toy, track weapon. So he went from a Tuscan, which actually was punched out from a 4-liter to a 4.3 liter by TVR Powers, which was the former performance arm of TVR back when they were still in business. So it was like Racing Green was like this aftermarket tuning. They kind of did all the really cool, almost like AMG.
Right.
TVR went bunk, went out of business. Racing Green turned into TVR Powers, like Powers Performance. And so to this day, they still do all the proper rebuilds and all this. So it's really, really like the go-to place.
How many TVRs approximately are out there? Because there's
Depends
3
on the
or 4
model.
models?
No.
3 models? Or is there a lot more models than we think there are?
Oh, they started building back in 1946.
Oh, okay. So let's take a step back and say of the pop culture TVR models as introduced through Gran Turismo and other Swordfish and other things.
So
we got the Cerberus, the Cigaris.
You kind of have to. You kind of have to actually go a little further back to kind of give some context.
Okay.
TVR became big on the scene actually in the 1960s. They were known as Cobra killers. So they were, when Carroll Shelby was dropping Ford engines into British Aces. At the same time, you had a gentleman, Jack Griffith, in New York, who took a TVR Grand Tourer and dropped a Ford V8 into it as well. But it was a fiberglass chassis on fiberglass body tube chassis, as opposed to the British Aces like metal metal car. So it weighed less, shorter wheelbase as well. So power to weight ratio was even better. They're kind of goofy looking. There's a gentleman in town who has the very last one that was built by Jack Griffith here in the Valley. Actually, it's for sale. It's like $120,000. Okay, full restoration, 8-year restoration. It's beautiful. And I actually got to sit in a different one he has there. Was actually by a client, same car, but effectively it was an actual track car. He actually tracks it. I'm going to tell you, I'm definitely not British because I could barely fit in that car. But once you're in it, it's
and you have good teeth.
Oh, attacking the fluoride. So in the 1960s, TVR was a really big deal. And if you watch this last year's Goodwood Revival, there was a brilliant race where we're talking like the V8 Cobras and it came to Griffith, Jack Griffith. So an American got attached to like a British manufacturer's car name because of his contribution of throwing the V8 in it. It was really, really cool, and they were faster, but like I said, although kind of goofy looking. Then the original Tuscan, they came out in the late 60s, early 70s. They made very, very, very few. That was their first iteration. It was effectively a more sportier version of the cars at that time. Killed it. Then they went through the typical wedge era design of like they're in the like LeMays and all that kind of stuff. And the flash forward finally into modern day pop culture, what we think of in nowadays term.
Right.
Which kind of started off with in the mid 90s with Peter Wheeler, who was the guy who took over. And he was just like one man vision kind of ideas. Like, I got this really cool idea. Let's build it and do it. Okay, fine. The Cerberus, the Speed 12, like obviously that's a big one. Is that
a real car?
Yes. I may get to see that in my trip to UK next month. Fingers crossed.
Is it basically bulletproof? Like, can you just ride around an oval and rub up against the wall like you can on Gran Turismo?
Just floor it on the high-speed track. You're just like, I'll just ride that wall until I get it to twist straight away and then just punch it until I'm like 250 miles per hour.
Right.
So they actually had a concept, which was just the Speed 12, which kind of looks like a very uber alien. And then they had the Cerberus Speed 12, which had nothing to do with the actual Cerberus. I mean, aside from a name, because chassis was different, carbon fiber, and the only street legal one just went up for auction last year and sold for like $750,000, which was a smoking deal because it's one of one.
Are all their cars fiberglass?
Fiberglass tube chassis, with the exception of the Cerberus Speed 12, and then later on they had the Typhon, the T440R, which was eventually going to be the Tuscan R, but I'll get to that in just a second. That actually they made.
Am I fucking your story up?
No, you're fine.
Okay.
So you had the Cerberus, and then at that time they were putting Rover V8s into all their cars. BMW bought up Rover, and so they're like, we got to keep things British, so we're going to develop our own engine. So they developed the V8, which was in the Cerberus, which I had when I was talking about last time, and then also the Speed 6. So you had Speed 8 and Speed 6, or the AJP 8 or AJP 6. It was just Speed 6 just was more sexy and it sounded better.
Right.
So you have the Cerberus, then it rolls around 1998, the concept of the Tuscan. 1999 was the debut of the actual production model. It didn't really hit. They had 13 pre-production versions of the car that were at dealer demos. I actually did a whole video on YouTube that talks about all this as well, like, leading up to like what makes the Tuscan so special. And then 2000 hits. Finally, the press embargo goes away. People get them, they drive them, enjoy them. And then in 2001, it debuted in Swordfish. So once again, a movie known for the car and the chase and the music because it's a Paul Oakenfold entire
That's all I remember about
Yeah.
Swordfish is the album cover and Paul Oakenfold was Ready Steady Go.
and Halle Berry's boobs. I mean, that was the first time she went.
Berry,
Yeah,
but I don't even remember her doing that. I
Right.
watched the movie once and I thought it was boring and it sucked.
Yeah, it's a heist movie. But
I need to watch it again, honestly.
So originally in the story, it was supposed to be a Lamborghini Diablo. And then the director's like, no, we want something that looks a little bit
more unique,
unique and different.
Yeah,
and so they brought over 4 TVR Tuscans in what's called Reflex Blue. It's absolutely beautiful flip color paint. And the interior was like that turquoisey green, kind of like the old Diamondbacks turquoise with purple. And then they actually like shot up the hood. Well, actually, put little charges underneath. So I talked to the gentleman who was responsible. He was a production manager.
That's cool, man.
Yeah, so I got to chat with him. He actually still very much around, and he's involved in the TR12, which is up at SEMA. We'll get to that. They brought over 4, and we just got to chatting about the whole process of bringing them over and how it was a really, really neat experience. And then the other models since then that are actually not as popular, or I should say not as known, technically more rare because they were less desirable, is like the T350. And then also the Tamora, which is a convertible of the T350, then T350C, which takes off the roof, and then last but not least is the Sagres or Cigaris, depending on your.
So which one is it? Do you know? Is it Sagres or Cigaris? I only know it from Gran Turismo.
Are we going to speak the Queen's English, or are we going to talk American? Because
let's do American, like
American
aluminium versus aluminum.
I know my wife, like we talk about this like it's aluminum. She's like, no, it's aluminium. I'm like, no.
Aluminium sounds cooler.
It sounds cooler, but they also call Z,
which is stupid.
And so does Canada. It's not zebra, it's zebra. I'm like, all right, come on.
Also, they pronounce it in a word like that.
Yeah.
In Canada, I don't think they pronounce it in a word, but by itself, it's always Z.
Like a BMW Z8, it's a Z8. It's not a Z8.
Yeah.
So little things like that. So in Americanese English, it's Sagres is what it's commonly referred to. And that was like the end of the production. The Sagres was supposed to be a race version of the T350. And that was right about the same time when they introduced it was like ownership changed so Peter Wheeler left and Nikolai Smolenski was a Russian billionaire boy. He came into the picture, bought the company, tried to save it over the course of like 3-4 years. But the problem is it was too late. The ship had already sailed. Something that you can actually catch on my YouTube video, apparently, we almost got Tuscans here in the United States.
No kidding.
So this was a really, really deep lore. There's a lot of...
Did they not want to crash them or what?
No, it actually wasn't even that.
That's usually the holdup.
You're right. Because it's a fiberglass body. There's no bumper, no 5 mile per hour bumpers. There's no fender. It's all one piece. The whole car is basically one piece with the exception of the doors, trunk, and the hood. So if you hit something, a lot of insurance companies in the UK will just write it off because you have to literally chop off the entire rear end of the car, graft in an entire fiberglass booty or front or fender because it's all one piece.
Right.
But as the story goes, I'm trying to remember the name of the gentleman who started McLaren car. Like actually McLaren back, not Gordon Murray.
I think it was like Nigel Peterson or something.
Yeah. Gosh.
I just made that up.
Sounds like a very British name.
Okay, thank you.
But the gentleman who he passed away, he actually had one of the most beautiful spec McLaren F1s. It's like this kind of golden bronze and brown. Wow. It's a beautiful one. I think actually the guy Mr. Bean bought it. Like Rowan Atkinson, I think, bought it. But
is that Mr. Bean's real name?
Yeah, it's Rowan Atkinson.
He's just Mr. Bean to me. Yeah.
He had one of the fastest times on the Top Gear test track.
As a driver? No kidding.
Yeah, go back and watch some of those episodes. He's a really big car enthusiast, almost like Gordon Ramsay.
Didn't he wreck the car like 2 or 3 times?
I think he spun out a couple times.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny because he drives like Mr. Bean with his glasses on. He's all looking with his helmet and all kind of bulbousy.
That's pretty cool trivia.
But so the gentleman who actually worked with Gordon Murray to get the original F1 to production, he was working with TVR at the time in the early 2000s we're talking like the year 2000.
Sure.
To build a company called South American Sports Cars. And they were the plan was to build in Brazil, in Sao Paulo, or with my wife, because like her Portuguese, Sao Paulo, like super nasal.
Is she Portuguese?
Yeah, she's Angolan, so they speak
Angolan.
Yeah.
Angolan.
So yeah, Portuguese colony. But it's kind of funny because like Brazilian Portuguese is nothing like. It's like American English versus English. The only difference is like I have a coworker who said like his girlfriend's from Brazil. She went to Portugal. She couldn't understand what the Portuguese were saying.
It's different.
Right. It's different. It's different dialects. It's like Spanish in Mexico versus Spanish in Spain.
Well, it's even like, so my wife's Puerto Rican. The family's Puerto Rican. We went to Puerto Rico 2 years ago, and my wife's like, huh?
Well, yeah, dialects are different, and then you get used to like your vowels and also wherever you're living. So they were going to open up, the South American sports cars, and they were going to produce in Sao Paulo anywhere between 200 and 500 Tuscans for the left-hand drive for the U.S. market, because labor was super, super cheap. It was shipping-wise, it's closer. Regulation is very, very business-friendly, but 9/11 happened.
Oh, that close.
It was that close.
Wow.
And so not because of all the happenings of 9/11, it died. And it was never brought back again. The business never happened. That was the only time, because as it's been reported, TVR was getting like 50 calls a day for like months after seeing the Tuscan on Swordfish from Americans wanting it.
Oh, I'm sure.
Right. Gimme.
What is that car and how do I get it?
Right. Exactly. It's beautiful. Yeah. It's in its own way. It's different. So, okay. So, whole lot of exposition. I'm sorry. But so fast forward to where we are now. So my client in Connecticut gets the very, very, very first TVR Tuscan under the 25-year import law. It's not the first Tuscan in the United States. There's guys here like in California and Florida stuff. They have them like registered in like.
I know of a few cars.
Yeah,
that are waiting, that are already here.
Yeah, I mean, they're so I'm not going to give them addresses or names or anything like that. But there's cars here that are registered in Canada. They go back on a yearly basis. They go back. But the very, very, very first one under the 25-year is the actual show car that was brought over, and it's absolutely stunning. Cool. And then as far to my knowledge, to my understanding, mine's the second. So mine is it's called Reflex Purple. So it's very, very similar to the Reflex Charcoal.
It's a beautiful color, by the way.
Oh, absolutely love it. For those of you who are not familiar with it, the closest color you're going to find is the Ford Mistachrome. That's probably the closest color you're going to find. The difference is you don't have to go to Ford and pay an arm and a leg and get written, all this kind of stuff. It's made by a company called Spectraflow. You can still get it, but it's like a couple $100 a gallon. It's effectively a crazy prismatic clear coat, effectively, that you have to spray over a different color. And if you try to do touch-up paint, good luck.
So you mentioned a gallon. Do you have any idea how many gallons it takes to paint a car? I have no idea. I've never even wondered till literally right now.
I've never painted a full car. When I was younger, my dad used to teach me how to do just basically everything, and we converted our garage. We had a 2-car garage, and we lived in a county where there was like no emissions in San Diego and stuff like that. Nobody cared. We had an 1 3/4 acres. It was basically farmland.
Mine is blown. That would exist anywhere in California. Yeah.
So at the same time, it's like we're far enough away where it's like no one's going to smell anything, because if you've ever been around a paint booth, it's like it's very caustic smelling. Unlike like the cyanide paint, like I said in my Cerberus. Yeah, that's a fun one. Cyanide-based paint. So we converted our house in San Diego. We converted our 2-car garage into a paint booth. So we had a window, and then we had like the garage door. So we draped plastic, the whole thing. The window, we had air vent pulling it out, taking the hose, wetting the floor. So obviously any overspray just stays on the floor. My poor mother. We had like the whole mud room in between like the garage, but it didn't matter. Like the whole house, it permeated. The whole house smelled like a paint shop for like months. But my dad would teach me how to spray cars. So like his boss, like somebody keyed his old Porsche, so he taught me how to do it, and we tried to color match. And then I had a '86 Porsche 944, which was only like a few years old, but somebody hit the rear quarter panel. So my dad taught me how to pull the body panel out. We actually got to spray it, and it was black, cheapest paint. And didn't matter. So, all right, this is how we do it. And so I had to do all the bitch work. I had to do all the sanding, all the wet sanding until you lost your fingerprints and stuff. But never painted a full car. I've done panels, done a lot. Never used.
What would you guess?
A couple gallons. Maybe.
That's what I would guess too. Because 1 gallon I could cover this studio with 1 gallon, depending on the brand.
Yeah.
but I might be pretty low if I need touch up.
Right. Or if you do like a couple layers, and that's the thing with
And you have to thin it out on a car.
Right.
And it might be a
Yeah,
different.
use
I have
lacquer
no
thinner.
idea if it's okay. I was going to say I have no idea if you have to add something to the paint.
Yeah, so use hardener and lacquer thinner on most paints, but with these flip paints, that's the other thing too, is not only are they really expensive, you can only get them really from like one place, one supplier. And that was what's really neat about the Tuscan I brought over. It was when I was shopping for it, I knew I wanted something very iconic. So when you think of a TVR Tuscan, you think crazy paint, crazy interior, because the car looks nuts. And I found one. But it needed some love. It was it is a driver's car, but it was very, very well maintained.
It's a driver's car that nobody fucking has.
Well, that's too.
Yeah.
But when I say driver's car, it actually has like 70,000 miles, which to American for a 25-year-old car doesn't sound like that much. But in a TVR world, that's like double.
Okay.
Of what it normally. A lot of them that are in really great condition are in the 35,000 mile range, which is really weird because they still go by miles and kilometers. They do like this weird combo in the UK. So all like their odometers actually for this vintage still say miles. So a lot of the really nice cars are, like I said, in the 30 range. Mine's 72, and everything was there. Most of the body looked great. But it had 25 years of acne on the front. So like road debris, chips.
Acne.
Yeah.
Funny.
Yeah. It's like little pops and chicks. And
sure. I get it.
So, and also from the factory. So it's kind of normal now, especially with Porsches. They have like a little tiny little service hood. You pop open. Oh, there's your fluids. No big deal. And then if you want to work on it, okay, you crawl underneath, take off a panel, or you take off the other panel, like 4 to 6 bolts. You have access to the engine. That's normal now for sports cars. The TVR, you have a little tiny little service hood on the front one, get your fluids, and then the giant massive hood is held on by bolts. So if you ever have an engine fire or you want to work on it or anything like that, you have to get another person to take it off by 2 people. A very common thing that has in the UK is like they do a hood conversion. So there's a couple little catches, and then they put some gas struts that are custom built. It's all a custom kit. So at the very least, it allows you to actually open up your hood to put out a fire.
Right.
Because the Tuscans were kind of known for catching on fire.
Why is that?
So, and it's not the typical British electronics like you would think, which is very common. Like people think.
When I think of electronics, I think of German electronics because of the BMW.
Well, BMW and then Mercedes had their biodegradable wire loom and some of the old.
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong? Oh, yeah. Or like all the mass amount of hydraulic pumps for the top. Oh, my gosh.
Right.
So, no, TVR had a lot of brilliant ideas. So if you look at the inside of a Tuscan, you have all this beautiful machined aluminum, machined brass, custom built, leather wrapped stuff, or vegan leather, which is, vinyl. But it's
vegan leather sucks.
Yeah, it's horrible. So it looks very exotic and very alien-like, but also very so you have this beautiful brass gauge set in front of you. It's just really, really nice, and it feels great too. And then there's all these afterthoughts. Thoughts like, oh, hey, where do we put the battery?
Kind of important.
Important
detail.
Wait, we didn't make our hood to be hinged or to open up like a conventional hood. So what are we going to do in case the battery's dead?
How does the hood open up?
Well, for mine, I did a hood conversion.
Is it like up to the side, the entire thing, like a Corvette?
If my fingers are the front of the car, it's like a clamshell. So the hinges are on the front.
Okay, so, yeah.
Like if you think like a lot of just British cars, the whole clamshell, except for it's not the fender, it's just the hoods.
Like a traditional Corvette.
Yeah, like an old school Corvette.
Yeah.
But you have the little service one, which is hinged, which is fine, but the main one was bolted down. So the solution was to put the battery in the left fender well. So in order to get to the battery, you have to take off the left front wheel. And then there's a fiberglass panel that's screwed in.
That's not inconvenient at all.
And then it has like black silicone seal around it to keep the water out. So if you want to ever get to your battery to replace it or to, they're like, okay, that's how you have to get to it. So, well, to make it a little simpler, well, hey, we could have a little jump connector. So what they did was they got an Anderson plug. And if you've never seen an Anderson plug, it's basically this plastic block that nobody else uses. And they put under the fender, pointed down towards the ground.
It's called an Anderson plug.
It's an Anderson plug. It's like a square rectangular block, and there's two little metal tangs inside, and then you have it's like a male and female, kind of goes over each other. The two connections touch, and then they put like a little rubber cap over it. Well, the problem is those little rubber caps, the strap that connects it, rots. The thing falls off, and then you have your live battery terminals pointed to the ground. We're talking like within 6 inches of the ground, getting wet, getting road debris,
Sweet.
getting whatever. And it's England, so you know it's going to rain at some point.
Yep.
So either the terminals corrode and rot out, or you get something in there and arcs, and now you have an electrical fire.
Right.
Oh, and by the way, you can't put your engine you can't put the fire out on your engine because the hood's bolted down. So it's not the best design. So
you have a custom version, so you
so I did a hood conversion. That was so before it came over here from the UK, I had them respray the entire, almost like 3/4 of the car.
Right.
Complete. There's a guy at this Windrush Paintworks in the UK. He specializes in just flip, like TVRs especially, but flip paints are like his speciality. Brilliant work. Surprisingly, paint work is really cheap in the UK compared to the United States.
Actually, not here.
It's really expensive here, but
Right.
it's really reasonable. And then I had him do the hood conversion. And the very, very first thing that I did as soon as the car came over here was I moved my battery connection under the hood. I went on Amazon, got a $35 standard remote battery relocation kit, drilled some holes, riv nuts, the whole 9 yards. And now if my battery's dead, hey, look,
Right.
I can actually get to it. So I've had it for a few months, and I kid you not, it turns heads faster than anything I've ever seen.
Because no one sees it.
No one sees it.
Let me ask you this. Why the TVR? Why TVR?
That's actually a really good question. I get this question pretty common.
I only ask good questions. But if you get it pretty common, then maybe not.
Yeah, pretty often. So if you think about it, car enthusiasts as a whole, I would like to say I'm a car enthusiast who wants to have a good driving experience.
Yeah.
You
have this and you have a beautiful RX-7.
Oh, thank you. The thing is, when it comes to modern day sports cars, and I've been seeing this more and more commonly on a lot of podcasts, is that all the new supercars are coming out. It's the same car, just different window dressings. They're all like 1,000 horsepower. They're all like hybrid this or something like that, and it's not even usable. And they're also unobtainable for most people. You talk to a lot of the car journalists, what's the best sports car that you can buy right now? Miata.
What do they say?
Miata. It's still the Miata. It's been the Miata for the past 40 years. 30 years, but it came out in the early 90s. Because dollar for dollar, bang for the buck, it still offers the best driving experience compared to anything else.
But it's crazy, though, because I would never consider a Miata a sports car.
But it is.
It's a great track car. So I guess because of that, it's a sports car, right?
And I mean, it is a.
Because when I was coming to high school in the 90s, it was totally a chick car. It was
I know.
We called them Skittles. But the
because they had like bright blue, white, like 3 or 4 colors,
and all the senior chicks had a Skittle. But that or a Volkswagen Golf, I think.
Oh, Golf convertible
or Rabbit.
The Rabbit. Yeah,
the Rabbit. But 2 or 3 generations later, you learn that they were just beasts on the track.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's like now if you were to ask me what's the best track car for the bang for the buck, I would say probably Miata.
Still.
Yeah, still. So
I
guess
the thing.
It's a sports car.
And this goes back to it because what makes a good sports car, in my opinion, is connectivity.
Love it.
So if you're trying to have that one with the machine experience, okay, feedback through the steering wheel, the butt dyno, how you feeling going around the corners.
The S2000 gets that too, but
yeah,
you could probably get more Miatas for the bang of the buck.
Right.
S2000.
When S2000s, before they shot huge money for, you're getting talking on POS, with a top that's just raggedy, which is something like the 20s and 30s for something that's total POS. You can still pick up a Miata for less than $10,000.
Right.
Yeah. Is it not as fast in certain things?
Maybe not as sexy either.
Not as sexy. It's not as big, but I mean, it checks off all the boxes for the most part for a sports car. So I had a Miata for years. I drove Porsches for years. I used to work for a Porsche for, for 8 years.
What did you do with Porsche?
I managed all their online content, so like the website development. And I would basically also be the initial point of contact for all the online sales. So this is really before Porsche North Scottsdale specifically they just cracked open like, hey, we're really going to dive into online sales. So I helped usher in their, foray into online sales at that point. And within like the first year, I was able to help increase sales by over 25%, just by instantly answering emails, for Pete's sakes, and then also just helping build out inventory and building out the website. But anyways, so I've been around sports cars, like traditional sports cars like Porsches and like Mazda, which is kind of like the Porsche of Japan, in my opinion. Has a very similar ethos for driver engagement. So this is where come to Aaron many years later. I want to buy another car. I want to buy another toy.
Sure, something different.
I was looking at Porsches again. I was looking at like 997 S's. Great car. And it's reliable for what it is and parts availability. But that was also at the time when everything was going to the moon. Like air-cooled, like 993s, bases were going for like 6 figures kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, you got to be kidding me. I didn't want another Miata. I had the 1.8 liter Miata for many years as well. So I was like, okay, I want some analog cars. I don't want to fight computers. I don't want to have to just deal. I want to just have a good driver's car.
You don't want to break the bank.
Right.
At the same time.
So I just started looking through what was available. And I came back to one of my childhood, like, my wish list cars, which were like unobtainium, and that was TVR. So I was like, wait, what's this? 25. I knew about roughly what the 25-year law was about. There's a lot of nuances that people don't understand. And also at the same time, it's very simplistic. So, and then the show and display thing, that's a whole nother can of worms. That's not easy. So I was like,
that's kind of the way to get through get around the 25-year thing.
Well, right? But there's more to it than that. It's actually,
so it's not as simple as.
No, and I'll explain that in a sec. But so I saw TVRs and I watched all the Top Gear episodes. I watched all these other, like, just all the content I could. I was like, man, went on the forum. Okay, I'm gonna dive full head into this pond of TVR like ethos and history, and their heritage is really, really cool. I mean, the way they were built in 1946, how they're like the whole brand, the culture, also the community is very, very small, close knit. It has a very, very Porsche community community where everybody knows everybody.
Right. And
then also like there was a gentleman who was the former factory manager who just passed away. They just had his funeral, and the gentleman who's the main liaison to TVR with left of the corporate and the TVR Car Club was like it was attended by dozens and dozens of former TVR employees, like the actual factory workers were. So they're all super close knit, man. All still showing up. So it also means if you're a jerk face and like you kind of mess up, you're kind of on the shit list.
Right.
So it's a true driver's car. There's no assists. The Peter Wheeler era cars, like the late 90s, said, well, why don't you have traction control? Why don't you have ABS? Why don't you have airbags? And Peter Wheeler's his ethos and his mentality about all this kind of stuff, probably because they were broke, but he felt they made people feel safer than they actually were. Overconfidence.
Right.
That it's like, if you don't know how to brake properly, if you're not using your throttle which
is a criticism of a lot of modern sports cars.
So like in my RX-7, my FD, I don't have traction control, but I have ABS. Don't get me wrong, I've actually used my ABS a couple times. We got pucker factor of 5, and you're like, I'm glad I had it. But at the same time, like, that's all I really have. I took out my airbag for a prettier wheel, but that's really the only safety mechanism that I have on it. Just like with my TVR, I have no traction control, no ABS, and my throttle is crazy long.
So to have something different and unique, that's why this
different,
TVR.
Unique.
So why TVR Imports then? You saw it as an opportunity?
Partially an opportunity. I'm not the only one.
Okay.
So
how many importers are there for TVR specifically? Because I know there's a lot
3,
of importers, period.
including that's basically me, and then there's 2 others.
Okay.
One gentleman has been just importing mostly the classics back east. So we're talking like the vintagey ones,
The pre-Gran Turismo cars.
right? Even up into some of the 90s,
Okay.
and some Cerberus, but not so much. He's more towards like the vintage TVRs. Then there is another company based out of Tucson, technically, but also Vegas.
A little close.
Yeah.
This is a huge country we're in, and there's 2 of you guys in the same state.
Well, it's because Arizona's registration situation with
the Southwest is really nice too.
Yeah. But so they cater towards high end clientele.
Okay.
People with more money than they know what to deal with. Whereas my target demo is me. It's, hey, I saw this car.
Everyday people.
I wanted to get this car. Cool. Can you help me get it over? And that was my mantra of opening up TVR Imports is not to turn this into a full blown business and try to make like a dedicated company. I'm like, no. This is a side hustle because not only do I get to network with a lot of folks in the UK, I get to hear their stories, which is so cool. Like I said, the amount of stories coming out of this little tiny small company are just astounding. But I also help other people who are similar to me, who saw this car, they wanted it, they got. How can we get it to them at a reasonable price?
Right.
Yes, I'll collect a small fee for my services, but I don't make it absorbent, or absorbent, whatever the word is. And there are others within the community who will mark them up insanely high.
Because they know they can.
They know they can. They're dealing with people who have more money than sense.
Right.
So for me, I'm like, that's not my target demo. My target demo is just the average person. So I will, between now and the end of the year, through my business, because some of them are waiting in storage in the UK until they can be 25 years old. It'll be about a dozen TVRs between this last October and the end of the
Not
year.
bad.
It's not bad. And I'll include my car is included in that number, so technically 11. So which is really neat because I'm actually going to the UK next month and starting off in Scotland, and I'm working with some of the interesting individuals in the UK to visit a few very special sites. And also, feel very, very honored. There's a company called HBC Classics who I partner with down in Sussex, which is really it's like south of England by about an hour and a half by train.
I was gonna say, isn't that New York?
Right.
Or Jersey or something. There's like a Sussex somewhere over there.
Oh, it's like West Sussex or
something like that.
Well,
yeah.
Meghan Markle is the Duchess of Sussex.
Oh, maybe that's where I've heard.
Yeah,
it.
she's it's Meghan Markle. Who cares about her? Yeah,
she's great on Suits.
Never saw it, but
it's a good show. It's easy to get hooked on.
So the HBC Classics is hosting a Cars and Coffee. Well, technically they're doing like a breakfast. They're actually doing like a bacon and eggs breakfast instead of Cars and Coffee.
Bangers and mashed cars and coffee.
Yeah, and they're hosting a TVR themed Cars and Coffee while I'm there for my trip. So I'm really excited to meet a lot of the folks from the UK.
Now, was it just timing? The timing was perfect, or was it like, hey,
it's gonna be their spring opener.
Aaron's coming. Let's do this.
If I'm being prideful,
be prideful.
It's an honor of me.
Yeah. All right, that's cool, man. That's cool as shit.
But
what's the reality?
I don't know if there is one. I think that
we'll take that.
Yeah, fiction is often more interesting than reality.
1,000%.
So that'll be really, really fun. So that's TVR getting into it, and it's one of those things where if you're looking for a car that is Viper-esque,
right.
you're talking this raw power, really sharp handling, crazy in styling, reasonable prices, and you don't mind all the idiosyncrasies that come with a British car. You can't beat it.
Right.
You just can't. So that's my story with why TVR is just, it's probably the
and you have
most
you have an event coming up at the warehouse.
Yeah.
Rebecca's deal.
So
of the show.
Rebecca, and
I wish I could be there, but I'll be out of town because I'll be at a celebration of life. So.
Yeah, that's a better excuse.
Yeah, thank you.
So so Matt and Rebecca, basically the folks who run the warehouse.
Yep.
They host regular events, as you know. This different themes. They're trying to make it a little different, which is really, really cool. Not just a park and chill.
I agree.
And this event that they're hosting in a little over a week is called Obscurity. So I actually I got to be a James Bond.
Well, a little over the week at the time we're recording this
Right.
on a Thursday, but it will literally be next weekend.
Correct. It's like the 22nd.
Yep.
And that's the whole point of it is there's some French cars that are going to be there. There's some like weird Italian cars that were mainstream brands, but you never heard of this car before. They did a little kind of advertising photo shoot. I got to like drive in the basement. Totally creepy, by the way. If you
I didn't know I had one.
Yeah, it's really, really creepy down there.
Not a lot of basements in Arizona.
Apparently it's haunted. It's one of the more, their basement is actually one of the more haunted places in Arizona.
Wow.
And there's a couple things they're like, yeah, don't touch that.
Yeah.
There's a ball down there. They're like, don't touch the ball. Like a little rubber bouncy ball. And it moves around the basement and nobody touches it. Yeah.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah. So they're like, they're pretty sure it's really haunted. I'm
Not
like,
to book a private tour or something.
yeah. So, because apparently, like a lot of people back because of Sunkiss factory all those years ago.
Yeah,
like,
Sunkiss factory. Yep.
apparently, some people had died there and some other stuff happened. But, anyways, so we did like a little photo shoot and video shoot, and it looked really, really cool the way they advertised it. But the event is going to be super limited. I think only a couple hundred tickets. But it includes like hors d'oeuvres and drinks and. Photographers can get there early because it's staged. It's going to be staged, very, very nice and all curated. Cars that are just really, like I said, obscure.
It helps when Rebecca is all about that.
Yeah.
As a photographer, and she has an eye for creativity, and she's really good at that. So I think that really helps.
Yeah, so it's going to be a really, really cool event. And I'm going to get to showcase the Tuscan there. And then the plan is eventually, so I don't want to spill all the beans, but in the coming year or two, I'm going to have another TVR head of the United States that's going to be kicking off my bucket list. So,
Speed 12 from Gran Turismo. You guys saw it, heard it here first. That's the car, and you can't even mess up the fiberglass. You can literally ride the walls around Phoenix International Speedway, Raceway, and
I might actually get to see one.
That'll be cool.
So when I go
look forward to that.
When I go to the UK, so I'm gonna try to document this. I'm working to try to visit Helical Engineering, who makes the TR12. So they were seen at SEMA a couple years back, and it's in homage. So they can't call it TVR, obviously, but Helical, they did I think it was an Aston V12 that they twin turbocharged and put out on a carbon fiber body, rear wheel drive manual transmission car. And even like Drive Tribe did a recent video like in the wet, and it was just uncontrollable, which it fits the car. But they actually recently discovered, so the Speed 12 engine was totally bespoke. So they made 3 cars. One had the actual Speed 12 engine, and it broke the engine dyno. So they had to actually, when they got another one, they had to shut off one bank, dyno it, and then do the other bank, and they just kind of played the math. So depending on the tune, is a minimum of like 700 horsepower with a potentially spicier tune up to 1,000 on a 7-something liter V12, like naturally aspirated engine. The blueprints went missing for this, like all the build stuff. So if you wanted to fix it, so anytime that like the engine was started, there was always a concern about oh my gosh, if this breaks, we don't have a backup engine, because there was another concept that had an Aston V12 as well as like a test mule. Mm-hmm. Which is kind of funny because even Mercedes, when they were building the McLaren SLR, they used the TVR cerberus as a test mule.
Interesting.
I can
kind of see it now.
They had this weird kind of nostril for
that long ass front end,
right? And so they had the space, and that's the way the engine worked. And they had this funky nose on it, but yeah, they bought multiple TVR cerberus to convert into test mules for the McLaren SLR. So that aside, it was always kind of like, okay, well, what did we do? Because then the third one that never really ran. Well, in the last few months, they actually found the blueprints. They actually found
where were they?
Oh, just
who knows? Yeah.
Well, because the factory, as of last week, got torn down. The original Blackpool factory, where TVR manufactured cars for decades and decades. Granted, they've been out of business for 20 years at this point. Well, even though they're technically around, but not really.
Right.
The factory officially got torn down. So as people were going through stuff, they found the actual machining blueprints. So TVR Powers and also Helical, primarily through Helical, they are going to try to rebuild and like make another Speed 12 engine based on the original design, because and also John Ravenscroft, he was one of the three main names for back in the 90s. You had Al Melling, Peter Wheeler, and John Ravenscroft, and it was the AJP8. So AJP, so he was the Jhae in the AJP. He's consulting with them on trying to bring this V12 back to life.
Interesting.
So I'm really excited. Hopefully I get to see it. Hopefully they'll let an American at least ride shotgun, and the weather's nice enough where they probably wouldn't let me drive it at all. But
you never know, man.
You never know.
You never know. Hey, we got this guy from the States. He's a big fan. He's importing this stuff. There's not a lot of these cars, not a lot of these people. You'd be surprised. I'd be surprised if it wasn't like, hey, man, you want to take it for a spin?
Or at the very least, putt around the parking lot.
Right.
Like, just keep it under 100.
I think the cops know you're here.
Oh, yeah, they know I'm going to be driving something illegal.
Well, that's an out then. So here's what we'll do. We'll take a really quick break, and then we'll come back and talk about Tempe Beach Concourse.
Yeah, there's some sad updates with that. Well, good news and bad news.
Like when I was
you're cracking it open from.
I'm cracking it open for you, buddy. Here you go.
Ooh,
so we got this Shibui 18, a sherry cask, single grain.
So basically Japanese single malt. Thank you, sir.
Go.
No, this is awesome. Thank you. It's from Okinawa. You know Okinawa actually does coffee as well?
Only thing I know about Okinawa is Karate Kid.
The Karate Kid. Yeah, like doing like the what was like the
little doll.
Oh, the kata karate.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like a friend of mine actually, she's from Okinawa.
Yeah, that's cool.
But I was looking up for coffee because I was like, she goes back a couple times a year. I was like, how cool would it be to have like a Japanese coffee and a Japanese like artwork coffee tin? Because they don't export it. And the people who take it back, there are a couple of people, but they want like
buku bucks.
Yeah.
But if you go there, it's not buku bucks. It's just whatever you can put in your carry-on or your check-in.
Right. And I was like, dude, I'll pay the extra $25, $50 to.
Oh, 100%.
It's kind of like the Southwest doesn't fly there, so thankfully, that whole debacle.
Are you sure Southwest Airlines doesn't fly to fucking Okinawa, Japan?
Hawaii.
No. Yeah. They do regional international. That's what we just did. So that's actually a natural segue over to the coffee. So let's talk about the coffee. Because we talked about that last time you were on.
Yeah.
A little bit. And which one of these tins do you want to hold? I have 3 of the. Actually, right now I think you have 4.
I actually have more than that.
Okay.
I have 6 different options. So what you have behind you. So
I'm handing you the nuts and bolts.
So
if these are full, that tells you I didn't really like the coffee as much. But
you're not a big fan of flavored, if I remember.
That's it. Yeah. So it's not your coffee as much as we're not really big into the flavors.
Smells so good. So my wife and I. So she was a little too shy to show up, but she and I she always wanted to have a little coffee shop.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I have no desire to open up a coffee shop, but I love automotive stuff like cars and coffee.
Sure.
So let's blend the two and let's do an automotive coffee. And I found a food grade coffee tin and had like a little check valve and everything like on top, like you would for like the little bags you get in the store. And then like the seal and everything. But it's all automotive themed. That was the whole point. Like, okay, well, what makes it a little bit more fun? Okay, well, all the base ones, like the light, medium, and dark roast, those are going to be oil weights. And
sure.
so the darker the roast, the heavier the oil. So you have like 5W30, then 10W40, and then 20W50 for the dark roast. And then anything that's not a flagship, like base, like just not unflavored, or basically unflavored for one, or not special edition, is going to be fun kitschy art. So and it's like the caramel coffee is technically called 10 millimeter because you never have enough 10 millimeters around.
Right. Or you can never find them when you need it.
You can never find it when you need it. Or like every garage needs a tin of or a can of nuts and bolts. That was the whole point, was working like all those kind of things. So I have a few other ideas like blinker fluid.
There's novelty blinker fluid that you can buy.
Oh yeah,
like
absolutely.
Amazon, yeah.
Or like wire loom smoke. There's all those kind of fun things. And then I have an Italian espresso called Martin. It's in a martini livery looking tin, so they're only I'm almost out of those. There's only I just did 100 of those.
How about a Like a transmission fluid or
Oh, I have a lot
coolant.
I have a lot of really fun ones. Like
Okay,
I'm just keeping to the side.
Good deal.
I actually was talking to the owner of Shift Cold Brew. So they're here in town. They're actually just for those of you who haven't had it, like it's canned. They also have like nitro cold brew, and got to talking coffee. Totally different demographic. They are opening up a coffee shop up in Scottsdale area, like close to like they're trying to at least. Obviously construction permits, all that kind of stuff. But I think this is gonna be up by the Scottsdale Quarter.
Okay.
And we were talking about having like my stuff on rotation there as well for regular coffee, and then also like
That'd be really neat, man.
yeah, absolutely. So he's gonna have the nitro cold brew, and then have like other guest ones like myself, and because he loved the idea because we're automotive themed. He's a car person and also motorcycle person. Also like with Ravi, who owns We Don't Lift, he sells.
Shout out to Ravi.
Yep,
it was your first customer facing retailer.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely. He approached me, and he's just been like this solid guy. Said, "Hey, I want to have this in my store."
Love it.
So I've been selling there. Just been selling mostly online, and then also like in person and selling. Our first in person was at First Fridays, and which is kind of interesting because you think like art's a festival, and all this foodie stuff, and then I was there with like Modded Culture and also with Mint Shade Collective, who does all the Hot Wheel selling. So amongst all these artisans and food stuff, we had this little tiny section of automotive themed stuff. And so my wife and I were just selling in person, slinging ground and whole bean coffee, and people were loving it, especially as gifts. And then there's also like subscription. I have clients who are obviously customers who are subscription based. It's been an interesting journey so far, and I'm working on doing a exclusive one that's coming out for a very, very neat event. I'm going to keep that on the DL.
A private label thing.
Got a private label. There's only doing 150 tins for that. So, but it was an exclusive order just for this very, very neat event that's going to be happening in early April. So keep an eye out for that, because that one also is a vintage based on a very specific oil can. It looks, I'm not going to lie, it looks really slick.
You know, we're going to have to maybe talk about that, because I think you launched maybe a year or two late, right? That's actually pretty good, right?
That's really good.
Well, yeah, so we both. I just took a sip of mine probably 3 minutes ago, and you saw the look on my face, and you just took your first sip.
Yeah,
and the flavor stays with you too.
Yeah.
But had you launched that maybe a year earlier, I probably would have tried to do something for NS Expo 2022.
Right.
But we'll have a conversation after this, because and I'll have to bounce it off a few other people, but I think it's kind of cool to have.
It's really, really neat, especially for like automotive culture. I have had people who I don't drink coffee, but can I buy your tins?
Exactly.
So I kid you not, there's a gentleman who went into Ravi until We Don't Lift, and he's like he's LDS, so he's Mormon. He doesn't drink coffee, and so he's like, but I want these in my garage. So I made a custom order of here's all 6 of my tins, just so he can throw them into his garage shelf.
Wasn't that the joke about LDS? Is as long as there's not another LDS around, you can do whatever you want.
I'm not going to get into that.
Okay.
I grew up LDS, so
I know. That's why I asked you that. Yeah.
Yeah, you're talking about
you cannot confirm or deny is what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about the Sunday Mormons now.
As we drink our Shibui.
No, this is great. So it still drinks light like a Japanese whiskey, but actually it's got more like the dark raisiny notes. Like you would get like an older scotch. Woo.
It's almost earthy in a sense.
Yeah.
I have some
mushroom.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have some it's not Shibu. It's Shimauda.
I'm not
Shimauda.
Yeah, I'm not as familiar with.
You'll have to take a flavor of that.
I love Japanese
before you
whiskeys,
leave.
but
a dear friend of mine bought me that, and it tastes very mushroomy to me.
See, for me, I like the flavor of mushrooms. Just texturally, I can't do it.
Yeah,
I can't.
Like but that's the first note that hits me. But yeah. So back to the coffee.
Yeah. So because I have my day job and I have the import business, and I have a wife and a social life,
and I have a wife. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Danya, hey, he didn't mean it like that.
Love you, baby.
Yeah.
So and then we do want to have a family as well. So it's one of those things. It's still a side hustle that we're just trying to do, but every single tin, we pack them, we label them by hand. It's
still,
yeah, and just So we take hours and we don the whole hairnet and gloves and everything. It all.
Is there like a glass of wine or anything next to you guys? Just like
No,
it's like a clean like drug scene. It's like you instead of packing like
it's like the scene off of like
drugs,
RoboCop, like where
do you guys have to strip down? So isn't she like her night gear and you're in your like sleep boxers? Is it that like clean?
No, it's not that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like we don't have to worry about people smuggling stuff. All
right.
But yeah, so we do want to make sure everything is like sanitary. So so masks and everything. So like no hair. Right? So it needs to be safe.
Right.
It's still considered to be cottage.
Which blowing my mind because I never in a million years would have thought about that type of prep. But I guess it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's considered to be a cottage good, like jams, jellies, pies, tamales, all that kind of stuff like that. Like in Arizona, this is going to be a really good point with our current governor. So our governor, I was like, Katie Hobbs.
Yeah.
I have an opinion about her for automotive wise, very, very bad flavor in my mouth. So they recently signed like you can do tamales and stuff like that, but you have to have like labels on it. It's totally fine to sell like for your abuela, and it's cool. As long as you don't, I don't remember what the actual amount is. It's considered to be cottage goods, and you can sell fine. But as soon as I start selling actually coffee, like liquid coffee, then I have to get food handlers licenses, and then it becomes just like any type of food trucks or any type of like business that sells actual food and drinks. So, but selling coffee beans and coffee grounds, as long as I don't add anything to it, and we're not talking flavored coffee, because that's part of like the whole roasting process. And then
well, that's right, because you can get your products
right
ground or whole bean.
Correct. So, but if I was actually like adding something to it, like adding like chocolate into it after the fact, then all bets are off.
Yeah.
Then you have to do nutritional, and then once it reaches a certain point, then you have to have a commercial kitchen, and it gets really, really expensive. And also licensing. But this actually, so the governor, in addition to signing this for cottage stuff, this actually affects the Tempe Beach Concourse, which last year was a great year. We got lucky in the very first Tempe Beach Concourse. It's a 2-year waiting list to have events there at Tempe Beach. Mm-hmm. Super desirable, central location, great. And just the photos that come out.
It was great.
It's cool. The gentleman who was the actual spokesperson, or he's again the organizer, it was a car guy. He said, "Hey, we just had a cancellation. It's in the middle of March. You guys want it?" Yes. And the way it works there, because it's a city park, they have to make it more accessible for costs and stuff like that. So it actually was decently affordable for a car event. And then how it works is they assume that you're going to have it there every year, unless it's a one-off event. So you kind of have a generic place in line, effectively. They hold your spot for the next calendar year.
Penciled in every year.
More or less. This is how you have like the same events, like the Aloha Festival and a lot of these other like Oktoberfest. Outside of those one-time events, it's always going to happen.
Right.
So we had our second. So the first year, unfortunately, because of weather, we had to shuffle cars around, kind of squish and move them. And
there were a lot of complaints, but if people looked, it's like, I'm glad I was parked on the cement.
Yeah. We try to keep people out of the muddy areas as much as possible, and then it was not ideal just because of weather.
And all the nails that people would throw off the bridge.
Oh gosh, yeah,
that was weird.
That was another thing too. So the first year, the Aloha Festival was the weekend beforehand, and there were screws. They weren't nails; they were screws.
I didn't know that the Hawaiians got down like that.
Yeah. So all the areas that they had set up like their stands, because it's a two-day event, they were using screws, and they were told to hang on to them. They were just zipping them out. And so we actually had the entire crew, all of us were down, picking them up by hand, one at a time, picking up, trying to find.
So like metal detectors and shit?
Not metal detectors, but so year number 2 rolls around. The Aloha Festival, once again, the Hawaiian Festival is the weekend before. So this last year, we bought those magnet like strips on wheels.
Right.
And so Chris and I kid you not, the day before, we are doing laps back and forth, cleaning debris up left and right. Anything you can think of. Thankfully, we didn't find any syringes. So just making sure it was best. And then because the weather was perfect, we were able to stretch out the entire event. It wasn't so crowded. It went off without a hitch. I mean, it was even Chris, who runs a monoculture, who does a lot of events. He's like, they were actually kind of worried that it was going so well.
Well, except for the people who peeled out.
Right. And that's what makes kind of bring me to that
Allegedly.
point. So for those who don't know, our governor and their office are trying to crack down on street takeovers, and also
Not to be confused with street car takeovers, which is a sanctioned event.
right.
Yeah.
So all those people you see on like all the social media who are doing like the donuts, like people flying, getting killed, run over, doing shot, stupid stuff. I mean, that's street racing. They're trying to combat that.
Mm-hmm.
So the governor has given grants to the various cities, Tempe included, to crack down on it. City of Tempe has decided that they don't want to have a car show at Tempe Beach Park. They don't feel it's in the...
No, is it just Tempe Beach Park or just any car-related stuff in the city of Tempe?
Any car-related stuff.
Except for the event coming up.
Except for the one event.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that's money related. Yeah. But
funny how that happens.
Yeah, so because we're like, well, what about this park or that park? And they're like, nope. Because they're claiming that people were like, for a static car show. So wait a minute. So you're telling me you're going to cancel a charity car show designed to raise money for Phoenix Children's Hospital,
right?
Sponsored by the U.S. Marines.
And your mayor,
by
the way,
came out. We have him on video recording how he wants to keep this going.
Right.
So a lot of back and forth. They decided that they don't want to have a relationship with us, and at the same time, we don't want to have a relationship with somebody who doesn't want us to be around. And so we started, you know what? We want to partner with somebody else. If we want to be, so yes, we could have submitted our application and all that kind of stuff like that, but you know what?
A little birdie said, "Don't even."
Yeah. So we're basically like we're gonna walk away from the Tempe Beach concourse location. And we're working with another city in town, and it's looking like, I don't know if I can say it yet officially, but we found a new home, and the entire city is behind it. Not just the city, the entire Chamber of Commerce, because it's
good, man. Hopefully that works out, because it's a phenomenal event.
Yeah.
And it's like when events like that happen, that's the good of the car culture. That brings the wholesomeness. That means we're not just people who want to do takeovers. We're not just people who want to race each other. We're not just people who just want to, I don't know. Most people in our community, they just want a place to park and chill.
Yeah, just hang out with like-minded people.
Like 99%.
Absolutely.
And when you do an event during the day, it's like, what's going to happen? You know, people may take off loud, but no one's going to sit there. And how do you mitigate that? You just put cops at every exit.
Yep,
and then
absolutely
everybody in attendance laughs at the dumbasses that take off like crazy and pull over, you know?
Honestly, like people we've all seen like the Mustangs on on Instagram, the videos, like
poor Mustangs.
The poor Mustangs. I'm sorry, y'all got to rap.
Yeah. But no, seriously, I think when you buy a Mustang, you have to sign a contract that says you're going to rev your engine every time you go through a parking lot or something.
No, the revving's Mopar. The accidents are Mustangs.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Fair enough.
So, no, we're really excited to grow it. It's going to have an opportunity to make it better than what years past. So we're having a lot more partners. So, like I said, we don't want to be where we're not welcome.
Right.
And because we truly are trying to do something good for not only the community, but also, like I said, to really fundraise for Phoenix Children's. And like I said, this good stewardship with our partners, celebrate car culture. And this is something where, like, I was really worried it was going to be the end of it. And so we were just going to, we're going to just keep trucking. We're going to try to find good stewards of car community. And because Arizona that's what I don't understand. People don't get it. Outside of California and Florida, Arizona, it's here.
This is here. This is it.
Absolutely.
Some Texas boys might argue with us.
Well, they're going to argue everything in Texas. Everything's bigger in Texas, including the car community. I'm like, no.
But it's here because we're next door neighbors to California.
Yeah.
And the Southwest region, we're not the Rust Belt. This is where we
don't get tornadoes that'll rip up your store.
Exactly. if you want to go somewhere and buy car parts, if you want to go to a U-Pull-It car, place, if you want to buy some classics,
right.
I mean, you can drive from here to Vegas, here to California, and you're always going to see that car up on that hill, and you're like, man, there's like 10 trucks up there. If I just had $1,200 or $12,000, I can go up there with a trailer and probably buy one.
Yeah, I follow some of these other social media places, like some websites on Facebook, and they were saying like car spotter pages, like Houston car spotters, or San Antonio or Dallas car spotters, and people freak out when they see something I see almost on a weekly basis.
We're kind of numb to it here.
Yeah, and because this is the other thing too, like this kind of goes back to why TVRs is like supercars to me are not impressive anymore.
It's hard.
When I can go to any weekend, anywhere in the valley, I'm going to see something like $1 million car.
So what's a car that you see, if any, that you're like, anything new?
Mm-hmm.
Because you have a very beautiful award-winning FD, and obviously you have the TVR.
Mm-hmm. So what turns my head when I have...
Yeah, so what turns your head that you're like, oh, that's pretty cool. Even if you don't want it yourself. What gives you a double take when you see it? And it's a good question because we're spoiled here, man.
We are spoiled because I'm not gonna lie, like I love the GT3 RS. I guess I'm at my heart and my core, like my dad's a Porsche guy. I grew up driving Porsches. Like Mazdas and Porsches. I mean, those were like the cars I grew up with. And just British cars in general as well. On top of that, like Triumphs, old like 1960s and 70s Triumphs.
Sure.
Where it's like low power, lightweight cars, like the whole ethos, like Lotus, it's like first add lightness or something like that. And
that Emir is a really nice car.
Yeah, I mean that's once again.
I don't know if we were recording or not. We talked about the Maserati MC20 is a really cool car.
It's really cool. Its style is beautiful. It looks very Italian, but it doesn't check off all the boxes for the clout chasers.
Weirdly enough, yeah.
Which is
so. What's the car? What's something you might see?
Head?
Yeah.
You know what? I know it sounds. Sounds at this point. It sounds cliche. Are the shit boxes?
So we're talking about the newer, nicer cars.
Oh, okay. Not the vintage ships.
Because I get it. Yeah, you'll see something like, wow, that's
so they're
really
actually
cool.
There's a guy selling a drivable Yugo here in town.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a small, it's like $4,000 or $5,000, but it's all there. I'm like, a small part of me that wants a Yugo.
Where'd you find it on like Facebook Marketplace?
Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah.
it's like in
I scroll through Facebook Marketplace.
It's like
I'm like, ooh.
Why would you want a Yugo? Like the fact that it's driving.
Yeah.
That's impressive. That someone actually had enough care for this car that the doors didn't fall off, the engine didn't blow up, and like it's actually all there.
It's not going to rust here.
And it's not going to rust here. So I was like, that's kind of, and it's so odd. And ironically, Yugo is going to be building electric cars. Like they're going to.
Interesting. I didn't even know they were still around.
They announced like about a month ago that Yugo is going to be coming back.
Well, there's a lot of like global car companies that we just completely forgot about because they just didn't work here in the United States.
Or like, okay, Seat is actually Volkswagen.
Yeah.
With a prettier package, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah, Seat. Well, we know it's a seat, but it's actually Seat. Yeah. They're all over the place. When we went to Barcelona, they're everywhere.
Yeah, because
I was like, look at this Suzuki. Brand. Suzuki. Wait a minute, this Seat.
Yeah. So I know it's kind of weird,
nice
but
too,
the cars that are turning my head, like new cars, are probably going to be the more unconventional ones. They're going to be wagons. I know this is really, really weird because as a kid,
Audi has some really nice ones. Volvo has some really nice ones.
Okay, Audi RS6 Avant.
Yeah, that's a badass looking
That
car.
is not badass looking, fast as hell, practical. I love like the new Panameras. I think they're beautiful. I'm not into the EV camp. I just can't get behind it.
Why not?
For a lot of reasons. The biggest one is like battery cost. So 5 to 15 years.
So you're worried about the battery cost?
Battery costs, also like, and charging, also like because
full disclosure, me too. But as far as looking at an EV, like, hey, that'd be kind of a cool car to have for like.
It's
3
like
or 4
driving
years.
a washing machine. You can get a Samsung, you can get an LG, you can get a Whirlpool. They all do this. They all have 1,000 horsepower. They all have.
Well, they don't all sing to you when the load is done. Ours do.
I know, it's like that stupid annoying little jingle.
Yeah.
Except for there's like a guy who make a really cool like you rip that and turn it into really actually nice song.
That's funny.
But like Jordan, who we're talking, he's got his
Jordan Sawaka.
He's got his Taycan.
Yeah.
And for those of you guys who follow him on his social media, he's been doing almost like these parking lot like fireside chats about the life of having like using Charge America or Electrify America, and his real world experience with a non-Tesla, because Tesla obviously has a supercharger network. Even if you don't have the unlimited charging like you did on the old S models, you could still use them. And yes, there are some of the newer cars that you can use like the Tesla stuff, but it's still not quite there.
Right.
So this is where I don't like the idea of the convenience. It's actually very inconvenient. It's very inconvenient because I've actually thought about this because so Tesla had their robo taxis at their event. And
they're new, the ones they unveiled.
Yes, Universal Studios backlot, and they had like the walking android people who actually were operated by real people, and there was a whole debacle. People thought it was AI and stuff, but it wasn't.
Yeah, they're being controlled or whatever, or were people.
So
something like that.
But the robot. Here's my thing: when it comes to commuting back and forth to work to my office, I could care less. It's a commute. It's a time suck. There's a gentleman. Well, I put me in an electric car for a commute.
Have you done a Waymo?
I would never. I haven't been in a Waymo yet.
Would you?
Yeah, actually,
I think I would too. I downloaded the app after someone told me that was the best experience ever.
So Jason Camisa and Derek Tamscott on Carmudgeon, they actually did an entire episode about. They compared all the different self-driving taxis in San Francisco, and they actually added multiple stops to see which was best. And Waymo is by far, and that's even in San Francisco. But they're not. It's not perfect. Like you can still go like in the weird like roundabout loop.
It's so infrequent.
Yeah, but generally speaking, it's safer.
Yeah.
And also it's just freaky. It's different. So for me, I would be totally fine with a self-driving car to take me to and from work because there's a gentleman in Florida. I'm trying to remember which podcast I was listening to, but he said that I don't drive a car. I pay somebody to be my chauffeur. And people are like, why do you pay somebody $35,000 a year to be just your chauffeur? And he's like, the amount of money I can make in the backseat of my car is far more than I can actually make by driving. So
for a lot of people, I guess. For some people, yeah.
So he'll spend an hour in the backseat of the car doing whatever, cutting deals, making phone calls, and that pays for his driver. So he's like, that's 2 hours out of my day I never get back. It's 10 hours a week I don't get back. That's over 5,000 hours a year I will never get of my life back. So when it comes to electric cars and like self-driving stuff, I am totally fine for a commute.
I think the biggest problem is in people in our world, because we're car people, is we forget that an overwhelming percentage of people out there on the road are not car people.
Right.
They're just trying to get to where they're going.
Right. They want transportation.
Yep. And that's why I've always said about Tesla on this podcast. They're not. Elon Musk isn't a car person. He's a transportation person.
I wouldn't even call him that.
Well, that's a Tesla. It's not about cars. It's about transportation.
It's a software. It's a software company that sells transportation.
Yeah, but to the core, it's a transportation company.
Correct.
It's not a car company.
No, it's not.
So like, well, my Tesla doesn't feel like anything. I'm like, yeah, because they don't give a fuck of what it feels like. They just want you to get from point A to point B.
Right.
And so I'm with you on that. I haven't done any fully autonomous. And by the way, even with the Waymos, there's somebody monitoring those.
Oh, see, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I know that.
Well,
actually, one of my
outsourced to India, I can move by or
no,
something.
it's here.
Oh, okay.
Like one of my most loyal listeners' sons used to. I don't know if he still does, but I asked him the last time I saw him, and I said, "Hey, what do you do? What are you doing for work now?" He goes, "Well, I do Waymo." I go, "What do you mean?"
They used to have a person who sat in the driver's seat.
No.
He sits. That's how it used to be.
He sits either at home or location, and he's responsible for like 20 Waymos at any given time.
So it's kind of like the security guy at Target watching all the cameras, making sure people aren't stealing
stuff. That's what it is, the loss prevention guy.
Yeah.
So if it gets all stuck or fucked up,
somebody's puking in the car.
There's always somebody monitoring the Waymos.
Right.
But they're not physically in the Waymos.
Right. They're not driving the car remotely like video game status.
He may have an Xbox 360 controller for PC like I have sitting over here. I don't know.
Well, it's kind of funny because like Amazon was trying to do like those stores that were like the self checkout ones where you just walk in, and it came out. No, you actually had people in India monitoring you and building it out in the back.
I didn't know that because we went to a store like that when we were in Portugal. It's a huge store. There's like a giant fucking Target or Walmart inside of a mall, and you walk in and you scan your card or whatever,
Mhm.
and you grab what you want and you walk out.
Yeah. So with the Amazon stores, and this came about was like a couple years ago. So yeah, you was scanning your ID, and then there was a person who literally was watching you on a camera, watching what you grabbed and put into your basket.
Mm.
And then they were charging your card based on watching you. So it's kind of funny because it reminds me of a 1990s movie with Robin Williams called Toys.
I don't think I've seen
It's
that.
actually one of his more the guy who
Robin Williams.
Robin Williams.
Yeah.
It actually has a really good social commentary on a lot of things, actually about war, and because LL Cool J is in it too, which is kind of
Interesting. Yeah.
And then oh gosh, what's her name? Oh, I'm trying to remember. But the gentleman who played the second Dumbledore from Harry Potter,
yeah,
Michael Gambon.
Yep.
He was in it as an American general as well, and so he actually had the bright idea of using children as drone pilots. So he makes this video game training center, so where they think they're playing a video game. Because he goes into an arcade, and these children, these 8-year-old kids, have like this better hand-eye coordination than any fighter pilot in the world, and so he makes all these toys.
Right.
This is 30 years before what we like a modern day drone.
I was just thinking that as you were talking about it.
So modern day drones, he makes toys so they look all cutesy and stuff, but they're actually lethal. And and he has these little kids that are showing up playing what they think is video games. And here we are today, where it's like, okay, we have drone pilots. So when you said the Waymo stuff, it actually made me think of like the Robin Williams film, like toy. Like it's kind of weird and a little artsy, but there's actually a lot of interesting social commentary about it when it comes to like modern day, going back to like the electric cars, to where like my wife, she's like, hell no.
Right.
She doesn't want an electric car.
Right.
And also for me, I also don't like the thing I don't like about electric cars is I can't fix it.
There's that.
So this kind of goes back to the thing I hate about a British electric or British cars in general. Is not like my TVR mechanically. It's really simple. It really is. Like the mechanical side of the chassis, suspension, textbook. Any person who's ever turned a wrench can really diagnose. Like, okay, fuel, air, spark, compression.
It's like changing out the carburetor on a 2-stroke.
I mean,
lawnmower.
Yeah, it's like real. It's really
or a pressure washer.
Yeah. Granted, it's using individual throttle bodies. Yeah, it's a dry sump system, but there's some higher end machinery. But it's all at the same time. It's still basic. You can understand it. You can fix it. It's a electronics suck, especially on the TVR. Everything is push button. Yeah. So if something goes wrong, then I have to chase the gremlin. My first degree was at UTI, so Universal Technical Institute. I have other degrees since then, but my very, very first one was at UTI. And Ford has an entire dedicated electrical program because Ford electronics suck. They are consistently, like, for the American makers, they are the worst. Hence why they developed an entire dedicated electric system.
Why, though? Why do you think that is?
I don't know.
Doesn't make sense to me.
Well, why is Land Rover still the bottom of the barrel for reliability when you have this desirable, like totally desirable product, beautiful styling? Because the British have always had very beautiful cars and attention to detail, leather and like burl and wood. So it's Bentleys, you name it. And it's not until you get the Germans who come in and actually kind of get different in engineering. But even then,
except for BMW.
Yeah, except for BMW. Well, if you get a brand new BMW under warranty until it starts leaking oil, which is
great for 3 years.
Yeah.
Mind blown.
Yeah. British electrics, for whatever reason, like and Land Rover is still not good.
It's bizarre. Because every car company will struggle for like 10 years.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, don't buy this car between the years of this and this, or this generation. Before or after, you're good. But
on the Discovery, they say, hey, when you get the 3 Amigos, like it's called like the 3 little lights, like the warning lights that pop up on your dash. So, oh, you got 3 Amigos? Yep, okay. And it's all the Disco 2s. Like we're just consistently like known to have electrical issues. So what do? You just kept driving it.
Right.
And same with the TVR fashion. The joke is, oh, it'll fix itself. You'll hit the right bump the right way, and all of a sudden it'll magically come back.
Intermittent.
Right. My
intermittent issues.
So, for electrical cars, I also don't feel when you have electrical power steering, you have regen braking, electrical throttle body, Like it's a potentiometer. It's not a throttle. It's not you send a request to the car now. You're not engaged into it. So this really kind of ties it all back together is why TVR? Why my RX-7? It's a driver's car.
Right.
Electric cars, modern day cars, you don't get that. So what's going to turn my head? Yeah, the RS6 Avant is very, very cool. Unbelievably expensive. Like unobtainable expensive for the average person. So
we'll get you out on the air on this because it is very expensive for the RS6 Avant.
It's a lot of engineering behind it, a lot of performance, but it's at the end of the day, it still shares the same chassis as just the A6 Avant.
Right, but at the end of the day, your average person isn't going to look at that and know that.
Yeah.
But they are going to look at, I don't know, the newest Ferrari or the newest McLaren,
the Daytona
or the newest
SP3.
Lamborghini. Right. So do any of those cars give you a double take even if you don't personally want them?
No. Honestly, it's because I don't feel that.
So when you were a kid, did you have any exotic car dreams?
My posters were like, believe it or not, I had the calendar. So like
Which means you're old enough to understand the poster and the calendar.
Oh, absolutely.
A lot of kids don't.
Like the classic poster of like the reward for higher education was that coastal mansion in Miami with like the 928, the 308, and all the Testarossa.
Yes.
That was like the I was like, oh my gosh, that's why you got to go to college because the reward for higher education is you get this. And then somebody actually did an updated version of that, which is kind of cool.
Right.
So for me, I'm a total car kid. I mean, from the time I was born, always been a car kid. I would get the calendars at the Scholastic book fairs, and I had like the Bizzarinis and the EB 110s, and
the EB 110 was like the first like non Lamborghini exotic, where
all that kind of stuff was on the walls. But I love the DeLorean as a kid.
Interesting, yeah. Piece of shit.
Yeah, total garbage, but granted, you can thank pop culture for that. So
absolutely.
Even as a 12-year-old kid, I was like, okay, they were selling.
I'd take one.
They were selling for like in the mid 90s for about 12 grand, 14 grand. Granted, adjust for inflation. Mm-hmm. And so I was trying, a 12-year-old kid. I'm like, okay, how do I come up with $12,000? So once again, weird car, totally different. So they have more character though. There was a clear distinction between a Ferrari 308 and at that point, actually earlier 308's Lamborghini was out of the U.S. market for a very short time as they were bringing the Diablo because they kind of had that weird period. Yeah. So they didn't really have any competition. So I'd say like a Ferrari F40 versus like a Countach.
Right.
And those cars couldn't be anything alike. Nothing alike.
Most overrated car, in your opinion, as far as exotics, without ever having driven one? Because that gives you the kind of the out, right? Because you could be like, all right, I just don't get it.
Vintage or modern? Because about
vintage.
Because about 2000, you really
and
see
how
a
are you
shift.
defining vintage? 2000? 2000 cut off?
Yeah, because that dates me.
Because we know the Countach is a completely steaming pile of shit, but I would totally take one.
Right, because also that's the other thing too. It has character. It has you get into it. It's quirky. It's weird. It smells funny. You have to sit on this door sill to back it up, and it's not considered to be a good car.
What's the car everyone loves that you hate?
Everyone just freaks out about. I hate.
Because you obviously don't like any of the modern exotics or hypercars or supercars.
Okay, so unpopular opinion.
Yeah.
Nissan GTRs.
Mm.
That's
the modern day Japanese Mustang, isn't it?
Or the Toyota Supra, like the Mark IV Supras.
Yes.
So
I'm going to meet you eye to eye on that because it's from the same.
I've driven.
It's from the same generation as your Mazda.
Yes.
It's your RX-7 FD, the NSX, everything, and it is the most overrated JDM car ever, in my opinion, because they drive like shit. I mean, you can make them
brakes
nice.
are trash.
The brakes are trash. You can obviously make them look cool. You can make them fast as fuck.
Yeah, but you're
you
basically
can walk
buying a whole other
Lamborghini
car
on the
at that
highway.
point.
Absolutely.
So,
it is the most overrated car, in my opinion. And
cool. From a tuning standpoint, if your goal is to get a car that you can really Put your thumb. This is significant.
It was literally the '90s Japanese Mustang.
Yeah. So like the Supra, Mark IV Supra, and the Nissan like Skyline car, I think they are really overrated. Yes, well, you can have 1,000 horsepower. Okay, when I worked at Porsche, we had a guy who traded in a 1,000 horsepower Supra. We're talking a lot of money in this car, so he can get a 911 turbo. So the nice thing about working in a dealership is I can go to the wall, grab a set of keys, and go for a drive as long as the boss is cool with it. Oh. It was, granted, we have better turbos, but this was, I want to say about, 20 years ago, or almost 20 years ago. So it's just, so I'm driving, okay, let's go, yay! Okay, RPMs keep going, and then 5,000, all hell breaks loose. Right. So it's like, yeah, you get thrown back in your seat, and I'm just going crazy nuts. And then comes time for a 90-degree turn, I'm like, please stop. Oh gosh, please stop. Please, 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 please stop. Because he didn't upgrade the brakes. I get it. But then once again, you're talking about another $2,000 to $4,000 to match it. So it's like money. So in contrast, FDRX7, yes, I'm biased. I'm not going to admit that. But watch any video on YouTube for anybody who's reviewed like OEM, like out of the box of those cars. What's the best driving car? Mazda. Even guys who have boosted them to hell and beyond, like who are doing a ton of power, leave the brakes, because
I've always wanted one of those.
Yeah,
I consider them the attainable car.
Right.
I had the brochure back in 1996, 97 or whatever, and what they were 93 to 90 what?
Technically 92
US.
For US
92 to what?
So US was 93 to 95. The entire production run for the FD body was 92.
So maybe it was 95 then, because I wasn't I graduated in 94 high school, and so it was after high school. But I had the brochure, and I used to look at the touring edition or the other, I can't even think right now.
Yeah, so they had a base, and then they had the R1 package, and then later the
like
R2,
2 or 3 editions, right?
And then there was like the PEP, the preferred equipment package. And then so the touring had
no spoiler, right?
No wing. Yeah, it was slick.
No wing. Yeah.
Well, also the base did potentially as well. But the touring specifically had leather interior and no wing and a sunroof, and it had like Bose stereo system as well.
Everything was Bose, and every freaking
they still do Bose
pamphlet.
Mazda still does Bose to this day.
You open up, it's like to
this day Mazda still does Bose
system.
And I'm still a Bose junkie. I drank the Kool-Aid, so
sure, absolutely,
I love it. I have like my Bose AcoustiWave sound like for headphones for my airplane flights, all that. But this is the other thing too, like from the '90s cars, like for those JDM, overrated Mark IV Supras, the GTRs, but an underrated car that I'm really surprised, like the Z32 300ZX. Yeah, they're heavy. They're a heavy pig.
They're heavy, but man, you can. Those are
and also this is the other thing too.
They haven't gone up in price either. So
they haven't really gone up in price. From a technological standpoint, they were very advanced for their time. They're very comfortable. Yep. They're 2+2. Stylistically, they check off all the boxes for the 1990s. The downside is like there's a gentleman I know. He has like one of the coolest like 300ZX turbos. It is stunning. Like we're talking like,
what is his name? Oh gosh, are you gonna say Lebs?
No, it's not Lebs. He's got an R34 conversion. Like he's got the RB swap. No.
He's got the RB swap. Okay.
No. This is so he has a traditional one, but he said the problem is like
Lebs is cool.
Yeah, Lebs car is really cool, but it's different.
Yeah.
No, sure. I'm trying to remember his name, but he lives back east now. He used to be here. The car. He
Whatever
said
the case.
Whenever he had to work on it, he says you have to drop the engine in that car.
That's how the NSX is.
Yeah, so anytime you want to do anything, because even though it's a front engine, you pop open the hood, it's so tightly compact in there with a twin turbo and the V6. He's like, you got to fix this, drop the engine. Fix that, drop the engine. So from a mechanical standpoint, he's like, it's a nightmare. But I think it's a really underrated car. A lot of the earlier models had a rear steering, which was really swanky for its time, really advanced.
Yeah.
But also is problematic. So a lot of the guys who get those earlier ones, they just convert it to just standard rear without the steering, just like the later 300ZXs were. But yeah, like overrated for that vintage stuff. But like anything that's gonna turn my head aside from like the wagons, like the modern stuff. I And granted, like I'm looking to have a family, so I've been looking at like family cars. Like Mazda's always are always going to turn my head just because if you look, I follow the JD Power reliability ratings and initial build quality. I've been following that for like the past umpteen years.
Right.
And if you look at the top brands, what are the top brands year after year after year? Toyota, Lexus, Porsche, and sometimes Buick.
Dun, 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 dun,
Oh.
dun, 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 dun,
Thank you.
dun,
You don't mind?
dun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just handed him the bottle of Shibuya 18.
So it's, but aside from that, I'm still a Porsche person. I still love the Panamera. I think it's still is a great car. The Macan apparently just read today.
So you don't like anything high end exotic / because nothing you've mentioned is that.
No. And it's
even though it can compete with that, like the Audi.
well, right. I mean, that's the thing. I'm like, I'd rather have something that's gonna.
You're lost, dude.
Yeah, I'm well.
You're looking at family vehicles, and I'm asking you what do you want? But yeah.
So okay, if I had no budget,
none of that matters. Like when I asked Jordan, I said, "Hey, what's your best car in your entire thing? No matter, there's no restrictions, no crowds, nothing." And he said, his McLaren P1.
Yeah, he got it. He got his dream car.
Yeah.
Because I was talking with him as well. I mean, he's like, of all his entire stable of collection, that was the one. And this is the thing. It's like for me, no money. I'd actually the Koenigsegg Gemera.
Okay. Now we're talking.
So if we're talking no budget,
none of the rest of the shit matters. Family, none of that stuff matters.
The Gemera, I think, is one of the most innovative cars to come out in the hypercar category. For a lot of reasons.
Is that the one that has a little tiny motor like this that produces like 750 horsepower?
They were going to do that, but they got rid of it. It had the dark matter, the Quark engine, it was insane amount of electric power, and they had like this like free valve 3-cylinder, doing 1,000 horsepower between like this
tiny little thing.
Yeah, the engineering behind it is just absolutely brilliant.
But none of that matters because they got rid of it.
Yeah, and they're going to twin turbo V8. But so there is there's a book series I used to follow. I used to collect every single year. It was called the Automotive Design or the Car Design Yearbook. Mm-hmm. And what it was is every single concept car came out in that year, just like a regular high school yearbook. And then at the back of it, it had automotive designers and like their history and about their influence. There was a car. It was called the Peugeot RC Diamonds.
Okay.
Diamonds and spades. So this is back when people were trying to do diesel performance cars, like Audi was doing the R8 Le Mans car and their diesel, which was just dominated everything. So Peugeot came out with this concept car. It was a sports car, but it was a 4-seater, and it was mid-engine, and it looked like $1 million, but it was mid-performance. It wasn't a hypercar, so it was taking all these really beautiful elements, making a really interesting design, but putting it in a somewhat reasonable package.
Sure.
Fast forward 30 years, something like that, and then Koenigsegg comes out with the Gemera. What is it? It has like 12 cup holders and 4 seats. It's mid-engine. Goes like a bat out of hell. Looks cool. But it's $1 million car. So, right. But it's kind of, I've always thought, how cool would that be to have a mid-engine car? It's a 2+2. The only thing that's even been close between that Peugeot concept car and the Gemera, the only thing that's been close, the BMW i8.
It's a cool car.
Yeah, it's not a sports car.
Heavily flawed.
But
a really cool car.
Yeah, I mean, for what it is, there's a lot to like about it. There's a lot to not like about it. But it's a 2+2, mid-engine, sporty car. So, different. Like I said, I like the weird stuff.
Well, with that being said, Mr. Forrester, thank you for coming on Hard Parking.
Oh, yeah. Fun as always.
Tell everybody.
That's how we get free whiskey.
Dude, anytime you want to come in the studio, I got plenty to drink. As you saw, I went into my closet here in the studio and pulled this out.
No, it's always fun to be here.
Yeah. So tell everybody how they should be able to get a hold of you.
Yep. So you can follow me a few ways. So you either go to Aaron's Eccentric Garage on YouTube or Facebook, Instagram. When I do make videos, I try to, they're not super frequently, but I try to make them just good quality. And then also for TVR Imports, you go to TVRimports.com. Also on social media. And last but not least, Garage Shop Coffee. Got your caffeinated performance, so garageshopcoffee.com. Also, you can, if you are in the Phoenix Valley, you can go to We Don't Lift Racing in Tempe and visit Ravi and get yourself a tin.
I need to get Ravi back on the show. He's been on a couple of times back when I had the Builder's Corner segment. He's invited me to it. Now he's in a new location.
Yeah.
But he invited me to the original location. Every time I go over there, I kind of look around. I'm like, this is not really where I want to set up a podcast studio.
Oh, his new place is swanky.
Is it? Yeah.
Well, and also because it's more space. And
more space.
You're starting
you saw
fresh.
the old place. I mean, I had to sit down on one of the racing seats to work from, while they were working on the NSX. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to sit down on one of your seats you're trying to sell because there's literally no place to sit.
Yep.
And the audio, the reverb and everything, but my commitment to everyone watching this or listening to it is to get out there more for the people in the area because, like I did with Jordan,
right?
And I got a bunch of others scheduled coming up. I mean, I might as well go to them.
I haven't had a chance to go see his new place yet, but yeah, he also just had his birthday, and he
just turned 40, I think.
Yeah, he picked up a new toy.
Yeah.
To start racing, and then he's also doing the South by Southwest track.
Southwest Speed Festival.
Yeah,
yep.
And that's blown up too. Yep. So I'm like, bravo! I love hearing like cool stories about people who are good good people who haven't finding success.
He's a great guy.
Yeah,
he's a great guy. So, Aaron, thanks for showing up today.
Thank you.
And it's always a pleasure to have you on. You're welcome back anytime you'd like. I would have loved to come to your place so we can get videos and footage of the car and. Hell, maybe I'll just
steal all my photos off of social media.
Absolutely. Or I'll ask you to go and send me some stuff so I can, overlay that for people who are watching the video.
Yeah, absolutely.
Instead of listening to the audio. So, again, thanks again, and you've been a great friend and a great contact over the years, and thank you for trusting me with my opinion, even if you go the exact opposite way, which I don't know if you ever have, but I'm just saying it.
I don't know, but no, I appreciate it.
It kind of feels cool when people reach out to me and ask me about things that are going on.
No, thanks as well.
Hey guys, I want to thank you for stopping by the podcast. If you like what you saw today, go ahead and hit that like button, hit subscribe, assuming you're watching this on YouTube. If you're streaming the audio, please consider subscribing and leaving a positive review. Believe it or not, that does help the algorithm tremendously. And if you're in a position to help the podcast upgrade, please consider joining the Patreon, patreon.com, Hard Parking Podcast. For as little as $3 a month, you can get access to bonus audio as well as Patreon exclusive swag and free show swag. Also, special thanks to the main show sponsors, Right Honda, Right Toyota, Toyota of Huntington Beach, Claremont Toyota, and Gardenia Honda, Arcus Foundry, Autocannon, officially licensed Honda and Acura gear. Your support makes all the difference in the show. And if this is your first time checking this out, and if you truly enjoy this show, share it with the world, and I will talk to you all next week.
Now it's stripping time.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Shut up!